First of all, I want to thank Platzi for letting me speak in English, because it's going to be a lot better than hearing me in Spanish here today. So, looks like we have to deck up. So while they do this, let me tell you maybe a little bit about my story. Most important to know, I'm a massive computer geek, and I absolutely love the fact that we are able today to use technology to both create products and experiences for people. I've been doing that myself since I was about 11 years old, programming in different types of languages, and have been privileged enough to work with really great people to build different types of projects and companies over the last 10 years. So what we started with Sourced is a company that was purely born out of a problem that we were facing on a day-to-day basis for over the last 10 years. And that problem was, who am I going to find to work with me on building great technology and great software, both in terms of working on projects together and in terms of hiring really excellent people. And as we kind of were tackling this problem time and time again, we were faced with this struggle of actually bringing really, really great people together, right? Something similar like a company such as Platzi does. So today, if you are a company and you're hiring great people, and particularly if you're hiring software engineers, you have to work with tech recruiters. And a lot of tech recruiters today are matching companies and people without having a technical background themselves. So I always say it's a little bit like paying me a ton of money to find you your heart surgeon. You really don't want to do that because I have absolutely no medical background. And we were incredibly frustrated by this. So what do? We took a step back and said, what is programming? I know many of you are learning how to program today, or today might already be software developers. And programming is one of the most creative professions that we have today, in my opinion. It is taking a language that's specifically written for a computer, for a machine, that is actually not that large. Usually a language has a few hundred different types of words that you can use, and actually has the ability to create all of the types of software we know, right? Virtual reality, self-driving cars, the apps on your phone, Twitter that I see a lot of people using here right now. And what I found fascinating is that such a small language that can instruct a computer to do something can have such a massive impact on the world. But language in general is something, no matter if it's a programming language written for a machine or natural language, Spanish or English, can have a massive impact in many different areas. So what did? We said, look, we want to help all of the software developers in the world actually reach their potential. And reaching their potential has not just to do with what can you learn and where can you learn. And actually, Platzi is a great example of a place where you can continuously keep on learning. But more so, it often has to do with the people you get to connect with, the people you get to study with, the people you get to actually work on projects together with. And for most of us, for a big part of our lives, the people we get to work together with, right? Where do we actually work and what's our team like? And I'm pretty sure here in the audience, there's quite a few of you who have quit your job because of the team you were working in. You weren't happy with, the other members, or you weren't happy with your boss, or you weren't actually feeling that you were continuously still learning. And we said that has to change. And it has to change particularly for such a creative profession as software development. So what we decided to do is we said, let's take a step back and let's look at this language, right? Programming languages today, there's over 350 different programming languages. There's several dozen very popular ones. And let's have a little bit of a look at what these languages really do and what they stand for. And we took actually a very simple thing. We gathered a lot of very, very skilled software engineers. I like to think myself I'm a decent software engineer, having been coding for a decade, but definitely not amazing. Different CTOs, VPs of engineering, all from major top tech companies. And we said, look at this same piece of code. We showed them a random sample of code from a few different developers. And as they looked at it, we realized that every single guy who had been hiring developers, or girl, had a different set of opinions on that same piece of code. So it's a little bit as if I would show all of you guys, one article that was written in English or in Spanish, and all of you would start having different opinions on how the subject was approached and how it was written. And this, for us, became incredibly interesting because we said, look, we have a program, and that program can do the exact same thing, but different VPs of engineering, different developers, think it's been done well, think it's been done bad, have different opinions on how the language should be used. And so we took a step back and said, okay, where have we seen this before? And where we've seen this before is in the English language or in the Spanish language. What I mean by this is if I take the top authors in the world, right? So if we take the English language top authors, maybe we have Shakespeare and we have Charles Dickens and we have Steinbeck and we have Mark Twain. And if we go to Spanish, probably my favorite author would be Isabel Allende. And there's many more. And all of those fantastic authors who we all consider some of the most creative professionals in the world actually use the language in very different ways. They use different words to convey different messages, but they actually also put their sentences together in a very different stylistic manner. So I'm going to start getting even more techie and geeky here. A lot of software developers today put their code online. Some of you might have heard of websites such as github.com or Bitbucket. GitLab is a new one, which I personally highly recommend. And what we actually see is that today, more than 6 million developers across the world put their work online for others to look at, either to contribute to together in open source, or actually to share just the work that they've done for others to look at if they come across it. We download every single code base that's been ever put on the internet. And the reason we download every single code base is to allow us to be able to take all of those opinions we've seen from different developers and try to have machines figure those out and not humans. If today you're a software engineer, or you're programming, or you're learning how to program on Platzi or any of the great places you can do so today, you should be putting your code online out there for others to see. And you're no longer alone. In 2011, less than 500,000 developers had shared their code. Today, it's over 6 million developers and 300,000 new software professionals every given month for the first time put their code online for others to see. What do we do in our business, right? What does Sourced actually do? At Sourced, we build artificial intelligence to try to understand the code of all of these 6 million developers, to try to capture the tens of thousands of different opinions that people might have on the same piece or different pieces of code. And the reason we do this is it allows us to match hundreds of fast-growing tech companies with the right people for their organization. Because what we've seen is that it's not just good enough to know that you actually understand the programming language and have done some work in it. Often it's far more important to find an environment that you get to work in where others in the team have a similar background, a similar style, or the things distinctly different that you should still be learning yourself. So, how do we know that this actually works? Every given minute today, we will speak with 3 software developers about a potential job for them all over the world in over 134 countries. We have talent moving from Brazil to Germany, from UK to the US, and a lot of different cross-border movements. And this is all of a sudden becoming very interesting because just like today we have thousands of people watching this live stream from all over the world, we are any given day having conversations with developers from over 134 countries about where their next opportunity might be. And often that's not the same city they're in. Most often it's not even the same country they're in. So from a business point of view, we work with a lot of sexy tech companies. But what's most interesting of these tech companies is that every single one of them has a unique identity in the way they work and the way that actually shows in the programs they built and the code behind it. So I wanted to spend the majority of today talking about this graph. And artificial intelligence is a very hyped topic that we'll see a lot about on Twitter, we read a lot about in the press. And one of the main things that we haven't figured out yet in AI, or technically often we're called deep learning, is understanding natural language and understanding, I can talk to Siri or I can talk to Google now and it actually understands what I mean. Natural language is an incredibly difficult concept still for machines to understand because its vocabulary is tremendously large, and at the same time, we have a lot of ambiguous terms in each language, right? A crane can be a bird or a crane can be a machine. And there's lots more issues. But since about 2012, we've gotten really good at starting to understand at least one thing about natural language with machines. And that is in what context we use certain words. So, skipping a little bit apart of the technical side, using neural networks, deep learning, technology that's modeled after the way neurons fire in the brain, we're now able to see how different words are similar to each other in their context. Why does this matter? So you're going to bear with me for a second and imagine we have a 3D cube on this stage. And imagine we've taken a massive amount of English language articles, right, from news sites. And we've thrown these against these neural networks using several different algorithms to understand what every single word actually means. What we start seeing is this. We start seeing that the word coffee is here. We start seeing that the word horse is here. We start seeing that the word water might be here. But most interestingly enough, around horse, you start getting the words for stable and prairie. And around water, you start getting the words for sea, but also probably the words for Coca-Cola. And because these are mathematical representations, right? This is what they call a vector space. You're able to also do mathematical operations on these words, right? I'm able to actually take the word for king and subtract the word of man and actually get a computer to tell me that that must be a queen. If you train it on news articles, European news articles in particular, and you take the word politics and you subtract the word lies, it apparently tells you Germans. And so we see that all of a sudden computers are able to understand natural language. But what's interesting about being able to start understanding natural language is that all of a sudden machines can start working with it. Right? This is why today we can start talking to our phones. What we actually do is we take this entire concept and apply it to programming languages. We apply it to the code that was written by those 6 million developers to try to actually cluster all of the world's source code based on how similar it is to each other. Right? Just like we have clusters here in terms of topics that were used around natural language, we do the same thing around programming and source code. Why do we do this and what does this actually mean? What this allows us to do is to look at all of those 6 million developers in the world and say, who are you similar to? Who is the cluster and group of people that is most similar to you in terms of what you know and what knowledge you have? And what this allows us to do, it allows us to tell to both companies and to developers themselves, saying, if you're working with these guys, this is what you're going to learn, because this is how they're distinctly different. If you're working in this company, this is what the team is like, and this is how you're going to fit in. And what this is allowing us to do today is it's allowing us to move countless and countless of developers from one country to another, from one job to another, where they are continuously learning over time and never being stuck at the same point in their career, not learning more. So this is what we are obsessed about at Sourced. We're highly geeky. We love the fact that software engineering is such a creative profession. And we really want to make sure that every single one of you who's learning how to program is going to end up in the right places in your career continuously over your whole life. So thank you very much.